Maestro Eddie C. McLeod. That's me, y'all. Welcome to another episode of Truth Spoken Here. Now today, it's my pleasure to have a gentleman who is here in Columbia, very well known among the literary community here. I'm talking about Mr. John Starino, local poet, and a man that basically I'm gonna let John tell you about himself here, because John wears several hats. So I'm gonna let bring John on in just a few seconds, and I'm gonna let John tell y'all about himself. So, without further ado, Mr. John Starino. All right, John Starino, could you tell us, give us a little background on you and tell us how you got started as a poet?
Well, thank you very much for that question. Yes. I started with poetry during the time I went to college. And I went to a couple schools, and it was like early in the 1970s I was studying poetry and writing a little bit for classes. And then there was quite a break. There was a break because, well, poetry is cool and all, but it didn't pay any bills at that time, and hardly pays any rent too. So it's like, I mean.
So you're like a starving poet?
Not necessarily a starving artist or a poet, and at the same time, it's the nature of the beast. And the thing is the major change, I'm going to go into a little personal history. In 1998, I was diagnosed with my undiagnosed medical condition. And now, some people know about this, the thing is the after effect of this got me more into writing. My undiagnosed medical condition is I had a pituitary tumor. I underwent 2 surgeries. The first surgery was for what's called the prolactinoma. They cut through my skull, top of my head, in order to get to it, and took it out. And they also took out my pituitary gland too at the same time, because that's what they needed to do. And then seemed like I was doing well. Then all of a sudden, when I went back to my recheck, I developed a spinal fluid leak. And when I tell this story, spinal meningitis would have killed me, and we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Well, thank God that didn't happen.
Well, thank you very much. The thing is, the recovery from 2 surgeries in 1 month's time was very painful. And the amount of pain medication that I was on during that time took quite a while for it to kick in and me to, heal. And then I was working at the time, had my family and everything, and I was, it was a 2-wage earner household, so I was one of the breadwinners too, and I had to go back to work. And it was like, okay, well, I'm close to feeling better, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, the 6 months are up, go back to work now. And and then I was glad I was able to go back to work. I am on prescription medicine because the pituitary gland regulates the hormones. And since I don't have one, then I have to take my medicine for my hormones, my cortisone, and my thyroid especially, and like that. So, and yeah, so I basically have an endocrinologist that I have to see once, twice a year, depending, and then other medical tests. So, there's a little piece of the tumor that, they couldn't get everything out. But, so I'm learned to be a medical client ever since 1998. 47 years young, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, that gave me a new lease on life. And then I started writing, and I found out by writing was helping the healing process. And then the more I got into poetry and doing my art and doing other things in the Midlands here in Columbia, South Carolina area, that it was a way for me to get relief from pain. So, and then that's part of my journey, and there are other parts of that too, and I could elaborate there. You have a follow-up question on that, or what?
Well, no, but I found it interesting that you mentioned something about your art. Are you referring to some kind of visual art? Are you a painter or something like that also?
I'm a photographer.
Okay, because as I mentioned in your introduction, I mentioned in your introduction that you are a man of many hats and stuff. So later on in this interview, I'm going to let you.
I can fill in a blank there. It's like, I'm an MC. I
Right.
retired from running an open mic, but my first open mic was in 2005, entitled Phoenix Tongue. It's my brand. We started at a little bar in West Columbia, South Carolina on State Street called the Red Tub. And they actually had a red tub it had a footed red tub in the restroom, and it was amazing that on my Wednesday night during the open mic, I had so many people. After a while, were writing poetry on the spot on a napkin, and then getting up and sharing what they wrote, and people would come in and just share that on the spot, or else all of a sudden it's like, I had one person in particular I remember that said, well, I just came to see what was going on here. I didn't bring anything with me. And well, that person may not have brought anything with them they had memorized, and all of a sudden they asked to be on in front of everyone and share their poetry too. So it's like I was very honored and very blessed at that time to be able to do that. And so, doing things for a certain culture, for our culture here, musicians, poets, comics, dancers, it was an very open mic. It wasn't just for poets. So, but the thing is I look back on it and I see some of the people that continued in the arts or got their degree and here in Columbia and then still on the scene and are here and so I'm very gratified to see as a certain phrases where the points of light that cross my threshold are still in the community and adding their art
Yes.
to our community.
Yes.
It's very powerful.
So, do you still run an open mic? Because you mentioned being an MC. You mentioned about now. You're also known by the moniker Sildag. Is that's your MC name, right?
No, actually, that's my poetry slam name.
Okay.
Poetry slam is a topic I can go into. My pseudonym, Sildag, that's capital S-I-L, capital D-A-G. It's actually two words, however I put it together. See, the D is capitalized.
Right.
The Sildag itself stands for Silver Dagger. And that comes from a series, a certain book series, a fantasy series I read by Catherine Kerr. It's called the Devery series. And the Silver Daggers were the heroes. However, they were the people that were shamed in the series. In other words, they were looked on as being of a lower class. They weren't worthy of certain things. They became mercenaries. And so this group did heroic feats. And, and one would have to read the different books in order to see what I'm alluding to.
Okay.
About that. But at the same time, I don't know whether your listeners want to be heroes or scoundrels or whatever, but I feel like it's good to be a hero once in a while at least. So it's like that's another reason why I picked that up too. So,
Yes, the world definitely needs more heroes. Well, your poetry slam, where is that held at? Are you still doing that, and where's it held at, if so?
Poetry slam is something that got started by Mark Smith, so what? And he is from Chicago, and it looked to generate more interest in poetry. It is theatrical. It is also competitive. We used to have Columbia Slam team about 10, 15 years ago here in Columbia, somewhere in that vicinity. And the thing is having a venue where there would be a competition between some people doing a 3-minute poem. There would be timekeepers and scorekeepers, because the judges were random 5 people in the audience. And it's like from 0 to 10, 0 being the worst poem maybe that someone would score that they ever heard, and 10 being the best score someone could get for an individual poem. And you have 5 judges, so the high score is eliminated, the low score is eliminated, and the 3 middle scores are added together, so the highest is 30 for an individual poem, and there's a decimal place, so some of you get a what is it, like a 20.5 or 0 to 10. So it'd be a 9.2 or a 6.8 or something like that. So yeah, that's just a little bit of a background. I'll have to recheck some of my memory again about that. But yeah, and places where people do it are in Greenville, South Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina, and there is a regional poetry slam coming up that's going to be held in Knoxville, Tennessee this year, and then Lake Ean Arts Festival also has it in the Black Mountain, North Carolina, twice a year. So that's a little bit of background about that,
Okay.
Right now.
Well, with this being National Poetry Month, can you tell us who are some of your favorite poets?
Well, some of my favorite poets are actually slam poets, or different people that are contemporary. There's one poet in particular that I saw him win poetry slam at one time there in Charlotte, by the name of Joaquin Zinatadeo. Now, he's a teacher, and he's from Texas, and the strength and dynamic, power that this gentleman has is amazing. And he can, he has videos on YouTube that, they're right there. People can, go to YouTube and find him. Other people are people that are part of the Charlotte Slam team at one time or another. Terry Creech, a fellow by the name of Blues. And then you have in Greenville a gentleman by the name of Moody Black, Kimberly Sims, Janice Pleasant, and certain other poets. My favorite poet, I learned that when I was in college as a poet, she has a book of poetry, is Denise Levertov. And, but I look to people that are more dynamic, being a slam poet myself and spoken word and having that little theatricalness about it. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, also, can you kind of tell us why poetry is so important to you?
Well, as I mentioned about my surgeries, it's part of the healing process.
Okay.
And at the same time, it's also part of the growth process.
Right.
And knowing that a lot of poets are niche poets. I mean, we fulfill a niche. It's like, and then we can widen it and narrow it down a little bit or whatever. Thing is I know there's a group of people that are responsive to me and my style of poetry. And at the same time, I'll mention at this point the recognition that one may get. It took a while for me to get my first award, and then also it took me even longer to get my second. However, I am an award-winning poet. And I look at that, it's like, well, thank you. But I'm also an advocate, so I still have more work to do. It's not about that I'm out, really? I'm like, okay. It's just nice to know that there's a recognition for, some of my work, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yes, speaking of which, you talk about being an award-winning poet. Do you think the poets today get respect they deserve as opposed to how they were viewed in past eras?
Well, it depends. I mean, there are different poets. I'm very glad there are people that become poet laureates. I mean, I believe we do not have a poet laureate. We have a former poet laureate, that's Marjorie Wentworth, and she is an amazing poet. She lives in the Charleston area, I believe in Mount Pleasant, and she has her own website, and she does a lot in order to encourage poetry and talk about, have poems dedicated to the challenges that we have as individuals, as people, and in regards to the Columbia area, well, I look at it and it's like, Columbia to me is known for its music more than anything else. I don't have any qualms about that.
Yes.
It comes down to it though, poetry and other genres like comedy, they have to build their own base in order to do something. And expand on that, the open mic I particularly go to is held on a Sunday run by Greg Sword, who is a very dynamic individual.
Right.
So he's a producer, and he does a lot of he's also recording other musicians and people at the same time. And it's on Sunday that I get to express myself and have a way to to share with other people. I mean, 2014 was the last time I had my open mic, so that was the end of my term to running an open mic, and that was at a little shop on Meeting Street, West Columbia, and so I'm familiar with the poetry scene in this town, and I'm very thankful for the people that I know that still, I support them, they come support me too, and that's very gratifying.
Right. Well, in several of your social media posts, you allude to your wife, who is now deceased. Is there anything you would like to share with us about this wonderful lady?
Well, my wife, Maria C. Addie Starino, was wonderful. She was a very dynamic and wonderful person herself. She was very much an earth mother kind of a person, and the thing is she put herself through nursing school and became a nurse at the Lexington Medical Center complex. She was primarily a pediatric nurse. However, because of what happens at times, that department was eliminated at Lexington, and then she went to special care nursery eventually, and she did a lot to help newborns that needed special care, and then she made a marked difference in many children's lives. And it's unfortunate with the tragic occurrence that happened in March 4th of 2017 when we all woke up to a fire in our den, and different things happened, and we got separated, and unfortunately by the time the first responders and the fire department showed up, they weren't able to reach her. And I think of her a lot. I still feel like I'm married to her, even though she's no longer alive. And I think back on my poetry as a release too, because I deal with survivor guilt a good bit. So I'm thankful for people to listen to my story about that too. She was a great lady, and so many people miss her.
Yes, sir. Well, you have self-published 4 books of poetry. Can you describe what that entails for aspiring writers who may be listening to this?
I have 4 books of poetry, and this goes back to one of the first groups I joined, the writing group, the Columbia Writers Alliance, facilitated by Jerlene Noble, and we had workshops in order for people to get published, like self-publish our own books, and there's formats. There are formats online. There's different ways to do this, and it's best for people to investigate what's the best arena. Some people think that they might need to get an agent, and after they publish their book and promote their book, and that's one way to go, and other ways to go too, and so some people, the one thing I'm going to say about self-publishing, it doesn't have the stigma. Some people want to still apply a stigma to being self-published. You got to do it through the academic process. You have to do it through this process, or, at the same time, everyone has a story, at least one story, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, and, want to do a documentary or some autobiography or something about one's life, or poetry. we all have a story. It's just how do we get it out?
Right.
Well, it takes practice, and it takes editing, revision, and you're lucky enough to have friends in order to share, these images with, and they respond favorably, then, well, you might have something there. So, that's just off the cuff. At some point, anyone who's interested in talking with me personally and have particular questions, at the same time, there's a lot of, there's exercises in order to promote what one needs to do. At this point, let me add real quick. There are different writing. I mentioned the Columbia Writers Alliance earlier. There is also, if you're into writing mystery novels, there is the Sisters in Crime chapter. Sisters in Crime are people that want to do some type of mystery novels. And then there's the South Carolina Writers Association, which has different chapters throughout our state. And there are different people that, I know personally that, they're interested in talking with them or finding their website, after that. And then I'm going to mention a couple names. Earlier today, this being Saturday, there's actually a radio program on every Saturday. It's entitled Write SC, WRITESC. That is on between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. This is Dr. Casey Whitner and Rex Hurst that are the moderators, and they're both active writers themselves and teachers, and that is such an informative program that you find. It's on the Point radio station, I believe it's FM 100.7, and that's from, like I said, it's from 9 to 10 a.m. every Saturday.
Great information there.
Thank you.
Lastly, the last question I want to ask is, well, you kind of covered it, but just anything else, any other words of wisdom for aspiring poets and other writers?
The main thing is patience. If you write, let's say you write a poem and you want to submit it to be published in a journal or an online group or an e-zine, or there's many places to publish a poem, with the internet and whatnot too. But the thing is, it's like, you might get rejected. And knowing that if you apply to a contest, it doesn't mean that, it may sound good to you, but you're up against I don't know how many other people in a contest, so it doesn't mean you're going to win every time either. And knowing that, your own style, your own way of presenting yourself is a growth process. And, I used to write every day. I don't write every day like I used to. I've had a lot of challenges, as I mentioned in my life, and so I'm at a point where I'm thankful that I'm here and I'm living my life.
Yes, sir.
And I have written a poem earlier this year that I consider the strongest piece that I've written this year. And at the same time, though, I'm thankful. I'm thankful that Eddie, you've asked me to share my thoughts and share my art and my journey with you right now, and so here we are.
Yes, sir.
Well, are you interested in hearing one of my poems at all?
Yes, I had. Matter of fact, the one that you did Thursday night. Tell y'all for my audience. I went Wednesday night, brother. there's a thing that goes on in downtown Columbia on College Street at a venue called Cool Beans Cafe, and it's a gathering for poets. And John was there Wednesday night, this past Wednesday night. Matter of fact, I was the featured poet, and John done this incredible poem, and that's the poem I want to hear. The one about
Okay,
yeah, the one, you know, the one I'm talking about.
Al Black is an MC, and his open mic is entitled Mind Gravy. And I was there especially for you because of, we have this camaraderie and friendship.
Yes.
And that's the thing about also supporting other people, supporting musicians we know, other artists, especially poets, and staying as best we can through the whole open mic. And okay, I want to add one aside, or one thing in particular that I remember when I began to taking part in open mics. Well, actually, there's two things. So the one thing in particular that struck me, when you're at an open mic and you happen to overhear something, like someone talking to friends or saying, it's like, I would caution this. Do not ever say to someone else that there's nobody here. Maybe the crew isn't here, or maybe other people aren't here, but let's say you're happen to be at a place, an open mic it's going to start, and somebody happens to mention that there's nobody here. Are you talking about me? I'm a nobody?
Exactly.
I mean, the thing is, there's be respectful of the people that show up.
That's just another one. I think that's just another one of those things where people speak before they think. You got people whose mouth processes things before their brain does, and you got a lot of that. You got diarrhea of the mouth, or whatever you want to call it. But I think most people do stuff like they don't mean any harm. But if you're sensitive, I can see where you might be offended by that.
It's all about language.
Right.
We use language. Another thing I learned from another spoken word slam poet is the 1,001 rule. What you would generally do for 1,000 people, let's say you had 1,000 people in the audience, you do for one, because that one person is there that may be a friend of yours that you haven't met yet, that is there. And so it behooves anyone to do their best.
Yes, because I read stuff about, not to interrupt you, but I read stuff about, I heard stuff about James Brown talking about some of the venues he played when he was coming up. He said sometime he had venues where, there'd be a small number of people, maybe, let's say a number like 25 people. He said he gave them the same show that he would have gave 25,000 people. So that's the kind of work ethic you need to have, or, even in something like poetry.
Yeah, so that's you asked me about what I would share, and that's a point I was thinking about earlier today too at the same time. So I would share it, and that's why I share that. All right, the poem that you were talking about that I read on Wednesday at Mind Gravy here in Columbia, South Carolina, is entitled Centennial.
Okay, without further ado, we're gonna let John do a little reading for us right now. So go ahead, John.
Okay. So Centennial, a mantra. Now this is in my fourth book of poetry. Originally it's in my second book of poetry. And my books are, you can Google my name, use that because most people don't say, oh, you do a search engine? No, just Google it. So it works out the same way. My books are on Amazon, and you can find the titles on there. It's better if you would like to, someone's interested in acquiring my books, it's better to contact me personally, and at the same time, whichever someone would like to do.
Yes, sir.
All right. Centennial, a mantra. In the name of a town James A. Michener used as the backdrop for his novel, there is housed a man now hated by many. Outside of the prison wall, he is incarcerated within a lone Blackfoot daisy rises, with petals missing, signifying loss of one's loved me not, for their demise is complete. Now still an alleged mass murderer, he waits, and we wait too. There will not ever be an answer that will satisfy everyone as to why. All I know is that the sun will still rise in the east and set in the west. Wounds will take a long time to heal. Vengeance is on the mind of many people. Our justice system will pedantically move forward, crawling. And a man will awake with his thoughts each day as the sun rises, alone in a prison cell, possibly numbing himself into believing this was all a game, wished to do no harm. Video games and their characterizations do not kill people. Was he thinking he is some cartoon character waiting for Batman to jump out of the movie screen and save these people? Arnold Schwarzenegger did it in a movie. Did his grasp on reality loosen so much that the bombs are not real, the bullets are not real, he is not real, and a hero will stop him? All I know is that I am alive. There are multitudes of people in the world alive, and one lone man in the prison cell will awake like all of us when the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, with the lone Blackfoot daisy stretching for sunlight, blinking his eyes because there's a light on at all times in himself, chewing his food, wondering what went wrong. Locked up, Batman did not stop him. And we wake up too, some to the sound of starlings' raspy cry. There might be a lone hawk in the sky, buses filled with people going to work. Some read a newspaper calling this young man berserk, and we, for the most part, finish our day in our home while he sits, lays down on his bunk in his cell, watched and alone. Some on Sunday meet to attend church. At that time, many answers are searched for. The why may never be known. All we know is that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west every day as we live on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you for participating in this today. I'm honored to have had you, and I'll be seeing you around town. So, thank you so much.
All right, then. Well, you're very welcome. I need to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm curious, what does this poem that I just read, what does it mean to you? I'm curious, so thank you.
I think it talks about, I think the way I interpret it is like, this guy's an alleged murderer, so, like, he has not been convicted yet, apparently. And I think it speaks to how people don't get the full story. They don't know the full story. This guy evidently must be having some kind of must have had some kind of mental issue.
Yeah.
Maybe had undiagnosed schizophrenia or paranoia or something like that. And so we just need to look deeper sometimes. I think that's what I'm getting out of it.
Yeah. I appreciate that. You answering my question. And that's true. We don't know what in particular is going on with this gentleman. At the time of what he did, dressing up as the Joker and shooting people in a movie theater and having some kind of, whether it was smoke bomb or some other thing going on, he acquired an arsenal and a lot of ammunition. And I read this poem because I don't like writing a poem. During coronavirus, I could have been writing every day, with all the different people passing away from coronavirus.
Yes.
And when it comes to now, there are days that, I don't know if we can go through a week without a shooting at a school, without someone, shooting at a church or something like that.
Yes.
And it troubles me with so much gun violence.
Yes, because like I said, as I stated in I think the previous podcast I done, I talked about the guys from Tennessee that the two representatives from state from House State Representatives in Tennessee that got expelled for protesting gun violence. And so like on average, like I say, so far this week this year we've had a school shooting. Some kind of mass shooting every week.
Yeah.
On average. So yeah,
it's troubling to me, and so that's my main poem for awareness.
Yes.
And I appreciate you asking me to read that so I can share it to your listening audience too at the same time, and maybe someone will be inspired to be an advocate for protecting our children or protecting people in general from gun violence. Yeah.
Yes, because sometimes when you speak about that stuff, it's like I said on my podcast, people get pissed off about it. Some people want to question your patriotism. Surely you support the Second Amendment, right? Yeah, and stuff like that. Like first thing they haul about is they want to take away our guns. Nobody wants to take away your guns. We just want to keep guns out of the hands of loonies or people. Not even, let's say, to be kind and gentle. Let's just say people that with mental health issues and stuff that. We want to keep the guns away from people like that and stuff. And if I piss you off, if I piss anybody off by talking about this, I don't care if I piss you off. If I cause you, while pissing you off, I cause you to think, to get pause and think about this.
Yeah. Well, it's still poetry too, and
yes,
I like to make people think myself. So thank you, Eddie.
Because I think, and another thing I think, and I meant to ask you this as a question, but I'll say it. I think. Whatever art form you're involved in right now, with things being like they are, I think we all have a responsibility to use our platform to speak to social issues.
Okay, I agree.
So
I agree, and that's part. That's a strong element of my poetry too. At
yes,
the
sir.
Same time, so thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, so that's John Starino. Thank you so much for coming, John, and I'll be seeing you around town, like I said.
All right, thank you, Eddie. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.